Please welcome Trish Reagan.
It's great to be here, everyone. Now, you figure I probably have to say that, right? But it is really great to be here. And I can say this from a personal experience. Great to be around so many architects because my husband and I are crazy enough to have begun a massive renovation on an apartment in New York that we bought last year. And I can tell you, I think I talk to my architect more than I talk to anyone else these days because it's become such a big process. And I really have tremendous admiration for all the work that you guys do and the contribution really that you're making to people's lives and to their families and to many of the companies that are dependent on these new spaces that you're designing and creating. We've been living through some pretty challenging times over the last 7 years, going back to 2008 when you think about this economy. I think you could probably say right now, our economy is mixed at the best. You look at some of the numbers, for example, you get GDP, the overall economy growing at, what did it come in at recently? 0.2% growth. Not great. A lot of people want to say, well, you know, it's just the weather, but there are some fundamental things going on that I think really are problematic. That weak growth is accentuated by the fact that the jobs we're adding right now, they're not paying a whole lot of money. 200,000 jobs a month is what we're averaging, which is, on the surface, pretty good. But then when you dig back and you look at some of those numbers, you see that we are stuck in a wage growth pattern that's pretty much non-existent. In fact, wages are kind of the same place they were when you adjust for inflation as they were 20 years ago. So what do we do to help grow demand? How do we get this economy growing again? The Fed has been trying everything it can. Pretty amazing when you think about it. I mean, multiple rounds of QE, these cash injections into the economy, keeping rates low for a record amount of time. No time in history have we ever had rates this low for this long. So money's cheap. The Fed is doing all it can. Meanwhile, you've got some headwinds coming from overseas, a global slowdown, problems in Europe, problems in Asia, and all around the world, they're trying to take a page out of the Fed's book, and they're making money equally cheap. So you say to yourself, if everybody's making money so cheap, and it's not really having a big enough effect on demand, then what's really happening? And I think there are many, and I'd include myself in this camp, that are worried we are in jeopardy of creating another kind of asset bubble, at least when it comes to stocks and when it comes to bonds, because people are chasing some kind of return. You know, that said, it's not all doom and gloom. There are some positive things out there that we should all be thinking about right now. And I think this is good news for everyone here in this room, all of you, including myself, since I just bought a place. The real estate market has been one area that has really offered some promise. We have seen a tremendous pickup in that market, and a lot of it's regional, but I would say that, you know, you can go across the country right now and really see that there's been some improvement. And maybe this is in fact tied to the fact that money's pretty cheap and people can go out and invest in new homes and new commercial buildings. Whatever it is a good thing. I was looking through some data recently, including data by the AIA. The Architecture Billings Index is an economic indicator of future commercial construction. And there's some good news there. It's been positive for 13 of the last 15 months. The economic outlook, according to the index, is also pretty positive for the next 18 months. It's showing construction spending that is likely to come in at 7.7%. 7.7% is pretty darn good growth, I'd say. So this is an area that potentially will continue showing strength. I think this is good news for everyone out here. There are a lot of questions about how you take advantage of this opportunity. How do you stay competitive, and how do you stay nimble enough just in case we have another event. I don't think we'll have anything quite like 2008 in our lifetimes again. But how do you make sure that you're prepared to take advantage of good economic times and bad economic times? Those are some of the issues that we're going to address today. We have a terrific panel here that I'd like to welcome to the stage. Here with us, here today, we have the founding partner of Ehrlich Architects, Stephen Ehrlich, FAIA. We have Principal Director of Operations of SQ, Dumas, and Ripple, Mark Ripple, AIA. President and CEO of Moody Nolan Ltd, Curtis Moody, FAIA. And the founder and principal of Link Design, Catherine Darmstadt, AIA. Thank you to all you guys. We did have a little bit of an opportunity to talk backstage, and I was fascinated to hear from all of you because I think you offer a really diverse approach, and yet there's a commonality to what all you are saying right now in terms of what you're seeing in your business and how you're approaching business right now. Curtis, I'd like to start with you because your firm, I think, has a good sense of what's going on overall in the country right now. You have many different offices, different regional offices. Would you say that there's different patterns of economic growth in each of these areas?
Yes, what we notice is that throughout the U.S., where we have offices, is that there are different economies. We see good growth in some areas, and then in some areas we see pretty flat line. But the areas that we're still continuing to see good growth is institutional work, colleges, universities, healthcare. Those are the things that, quite frankly, even during the 2008 recession, still had had opportunities, and the same is still happening. So we are, of course, one of those firms, and I know there's many out here that happen to do a lot of institutional work, and that has been a hedge to some degree when the economy is not as robust as we'd like to have it.
So some of the institutions that are still spending the money. I know that you, Catherine, in some ways also leverage that, not from an institutional perspective, but from a government perspective. You focused in very much on some of the nonprofit opportunities. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so within Lake Design, we work within the built environment, and we use that and architecture as a tool to solve the structural inequities that we see there. We use architecture to restore agency, power, and authority, and by starting in that way, we worked really strongly with community organizations and non-for-profits to work in a variety of different sectors. So it started out very diverse, but I feel our firm has been able to leverage that, what we see as something that might be an independent grant or a donor in the nonprofit industry. That collaboration and cooperation has led to other partnerships within the private sector, because we're seeing a thread of social responsibility in communities leads to social responsibility in larger corporations, and that's how we've been able to leverage our future private sector work through our public sector start.
It seems as though specialization is a pretty important part of the business these days. Mark, how critical is that for each architect and each firm to be able to offer something that's different and more specialized than, say, competitors?
Yeah, for our firm, we were in a unique situation nationally because of the post-Katrina recovery. If there were, in fact, a belt...
I should remind everyone that Mark's firm is based in New Orleans, and yes. he lived through the whole ordeal with Katrina
yes.
and the aftermath thereafter.
Right. So if there were a precise bell curve from 2008 to 2012 where the rest of the country was in the depths of a recession, that corresponded almost exactly with the bulk of the recovery work. So during that period, the firm expanded almost twice. It went from about 25 to 30. We're now over 50. The result of that, though, was that because there was so much work in New Orleans and in the Gulf Coast, we saw a significant influx of competition of national firms, and in some cases, very large multinational firms coming in and capturing work that was previously not there. So we realized now that that work has tailed off and we're a firm of 50 and we see growth as part of central to our mission, we have to do things differently. And you mentioned nimbleness. Nimbleness is absolutely essential. You know, we do annual strategic planning, although our core mission and value statement values are essential, the way in which we achieve that mission continually varies. So the two things that we're doing, number one, you mentioned specializing, and it's not so much market sector specialization, but it's specialization of expertise within the firm. So areas we hear lots of talk about resiliency. We've developed a fellowship research program focusing on coastal resiliency. We have incredible expertise within the studio dealing with building technology, building envelope technology, and from a business standpoint, the other thing we're seeing much more of is strategic collaborative partnerships with firms. At this point, I was mentioning Stephen at lunch, probably well over half, perhaps 2/3 of our work now is in strategic collaborative relationships with other architectural firms because we've had to compete in a different way than we never competed before.
Collaboration is very important. Stephen, congratulations again on the award. Tremendous. What are you seeing right now in terms of your horizon as you look out over, say, the next 12 to 18 months based there on the West Coast?
We are very busy, I'm really happy to say, and there's a lot of activity. We are a very diverse firm, as you can kind of, in terms of our project type, as you can see. And for us, the outlook is incredibly optimistic and positive, and we're looking forward to that.
It's good to hear. Let me ask you all this question. I mean, one of the challenges as a business owner is making sure you're staying on top of technology, staying on top of trends, while at the same time having to meet the demand of just the basic workload on a day-to-day basis. Any suggestions, recommendations, Mark, for everyone out here in terms of how you can best approach technology to use it to your advantage as your friend right now?
Again, because we're now having to compete with firms that have significantly more resources, we've done a number of things. Number one, we may be one of the few firms of our size that actually has our CFO as a principal in the firm, and also with me directs all of the operations of the firm. So we consider ourselves a very well-managed firm. Of course, that's nothing to do with the fact that I'm the director of operations. That's something. But seriously, the CFO has a significant role in keeping us profitable. And what that allows us to do is reinvest in things that normally firms of 40 or 50 people cannot be able to offer, and some things that bigger firms have to offer. So we have a full-time BIM manager that is 100% non-billable, that does nothing but coaching technology and staying abreast of. And it's, again, those kinds of things that you don't typically see in a small firm, but we really feel like that we have to do as well as the bigger firms in order to stay competitive.
Captain, globalization is very much on everyone's mind these days, especially as the president tries to get this free trade agreement through. But let me ask you, as much as some folks are concerned about jobs moving overseas and losing those jobs, can you say as a business owner that it's helpful to you to be able to use some of these overseas resources?
We actually tack back, and we're incredibly hyper-local within Chicago itself. So as our firm has diversified over the years, we just started, got our contractor's license, so we're doing architect-led design build right now. We just got rough inspections for our first project just yesterday, so there is a God out there somewhere. But what we do is within that is how do we create an ecosystem within Chicago itself? It's a rich city, it's a rich urban environment, and so we look how do we hire locally so we can train local jobs on our design projects itself. So how can we train local employees? How do we integrate an academic curriculum? So while globalization has its advantages and could probably, if we leverage it in a variety of ways, could probably reduce bottom line, we're very concerned about using our projects as a tool to build community, and so we internalize
So is everything that you do 100% based out of USA and primarily in Chicago?
Predominantly within Chicago. So our contractors we're in Chicago. We're architects. We're in Chicago. We leverage partnerships with veterans organizations who provide. So our contracting company provides jobs for veterans returning from war right now. And so those are the partnerships of how do we create an ecosystem within the city and use architecture as a tool to do that. So we looked at a comprehensive system and really decided it's a tough enough problem to focus locally, and we could use that as a model to possibly expand globally and share strategies.
Curtis, curious, what kind of technology are you embracing right now?
Well, I think most firms have to stay up on the highest level of technology available. So we have every type of software that we know is out there that can help our business. Revit is what drives us, and all of our offices, we have 8 offices throughout the U.S., and all of our offices are Revit smart. You mentioned international, and our international work really comes from a U.S. client. We did not seek to go international, but we were taken international by a U.S. client that happened to be a major retailer that selected us to do the domestic and international work. And so when we talk about the trade issues, we do have to recognize that as we work abroad in the work we do, that we have to be sensitive to the different needs that we face in those locations. But in general, we continue to upgrade technology, not just for production. We believe that instead of sending the work overseas, that is very economical in some ways to produce. We use our regional offices like that. So we send work from regional office to regional office to produce work through technology, smart boards, and the like. Because today's world, we find that we need to cut back on travel when we don't have to. Travel when we have to, cut back and use technology to interface with our clients and our offices throughout the U.S.
Mark, you want to add anything to that in terms of the opportunities in the tech space and how to use technology to lower costs?
We were mentioning earlier that I would have never thought 10 years ago that a small firm that it would make sense to offload to work overseas, but we are in fact doing that, and we embrace that. It doesn't affect us as a relatively small firm the way it affects the larger firms and the multinationals. But it's
improving your efficiency and ability to meet client demand.
And as we talked about, you have to be very careful about the ethical considerations. If you're getting something for 1/10 the price, you can do it. There's, I think, an ethical obligation to make sure that it's not, a sweatshop somewhere in Bangladesh, that it is in fact something that does not compromise your ethical position.
Stephen, the theme of this year's conference is impact, and could you sort of sum up what the impact is of architects on life in America? Out there in LA, what kind of potential impact can you have? It's a bit of a broad theoretical question. I know my architects get impact on me and my family's life, and enough impact that my little 5-year-old daughter, I think she wants to be an architect when she grows up, because she keeps drawing sketches and telling me this is going to go here and this is going to go there. But what does it really mean to a community?
Well, I think that what we're seeing in Los Angeles, which has been for many years a car culture, horizontal city, we're seeing a great interest in increased density nodes. We're having a huge metro rail system put in. It's halfway through being put into the city. It's very exciting. So I would say the impact that I see is that I believe architects are making a huge difference in that they're building and reinforcing community. And it could be a large complex project, or it could be a small community center, library, whatever that might be. And I think contributing in small ways can lead to a bigger picture.
And Mark, you think about a city like New Orleans, which has such a storied past and such specific architecture that seems very New Orleans. How do you modernize and yet keep the community traditions in place?
And I think that's the biggest challenge of our day, is that in this era of globalization, we had at lunch that, curtain walls made in Germany. Well, how do you keep every building looking like it was built or designed in Germany? How do you do buildings that are truly of their place and reflect their culture? And that's a huge challenge. And it gets to the heart of what we really quite often have difficulty doing, which is conveying the design as a value proposition with clients. Because again, there's so many pressures with the client in terms of reduced fees, all of the results of this national downturn, more complexity of services. So through that, our core sort of mission in our firm is doing great buildings that are very much of their place, and that's a challenge.
You mentioned value. I think that since 2008, everyone out there is looking for more and more value, and it's almost as though the American psyche has been changed somewhat, in that people are becoming more demanding. Customers really want to see this value, and it's something that really hasn't gone away. I don't necessarily know as it will. I mean, it's something that this generation very much wants. How do you provide, Curtis, more value to your customers when that is exactly what they want right now?
Well, and that's you're hitting the nail on the head. What we're finding across the board, and even our discussion during lunch talked about this to some degree, clients are very demanding, more so than we used to see. Don't know what drives it, except expectations are up, fees are still at the same level, and at the same time, as we compete against each other, we all drive that too. We drive the fact that the expectations are pretty high. What we've tried to do is quantify those going in. Quantify each time what is the value we bring to this endeavor, to this client. And it varies with firm. We're all different size firms up here. And as we reach a certain plateau of size and growth, you have to make a decision as to what do you do different, because you don't stay the same. So we make a decision that the value we used to bring, design is the value that we all aspire to, design. But it's hard to communicate to a person who doesn't understand, well, what does that do to my bottom line? So in that case, if we're working with a developer, we have to be able to show them that good design, the benefit to you is we're going to sell your building faster. It's going to be maintained. People are going to be healthier in this building than they were in your previous buildings like this that we provided for you, and so on. So we have to, each case by case, come up with the value add that we bring through the services we offer to that specific client, and it varies again. And our personnel, as we grow, we each add staff that are more seasoned. That helps too. All of that becomes a benefit to the client.
Stephen, you talked to me earlier about the importance of having architects work together with contractors, and that being one of the value-add propositions you can do here. How's that going?
So almost by accident, we were asked to participate in a design-build project about 10 years ago, and that was the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism. And we collaborated with an executive architect, with a contractor, and we found that we delivered great value to this project using co-location, using technology as a very powerful tool, communicating together all of the different team members, including subcontractors, and they were able to build this building at a very, very low budget, or very high value, low budget, and they were able to do it within 22 months from the beginning of programming the building all the way to completion and occupancy. And mind you, this is a 235,000 square foot building that took 22 months, and that's about how long it takes to do a bathroom remodel in Los Angeles.
Yeah, no, I believe it. So you get the added benefit of being able to do something in a much shorter amount of time. But let me just ask you sort of the layperson's question here, and Catherine, maybe you have some thoughts on this. How does your client feel on all this? Because sometimes the worry is, maybe I don't want my architect and my contractor working directly together, because then who's supervising who? Is that what you give up as a client in order to get the value add?
No, I don't think you're getting a better value as a client by working in an integrated approach overall, because there's a point of expertise that can understand that entire process from concept to construction, and then it's You're protected through your contracts. We understand that. That's a whole other conversation. But I think what it is, it's showing that's our value, that's our agency, that's our authority. And what we see as a firm, my firm started at my kitchen table at the height of the recession, so at least I wasn't in my garage. But we take these cues from what the large firms are doing and we integrate them into our own firm itself, so we can use all of these strategies of design, build, and do it at this small firm scale. We could grow to 3 people. We just signed our first contract with the city of Chicago to manage and design, develop, and build a 500,000 square feet of public space. So those small actions ultimately lead to the larger projects themselves, and it's not a turnkey solution, but it's a slow momentum. We all started small. Everyone in the audience started small. It's a choice, and all of these strategies, tools, technologies allow you to grow at the rate and the responsibility that you want to assume. It's taking risks, but it's not being reckless, and provides better value for the client in the end to work with someone who's educated and skilled in all of these different areas.
You know, you think about being nimble, you think about preparing for tough economic environments. You certainly don't think about preparing for a hurricane, unlike anything, you know, we've ever seen. I spent a lot of time there, about 6 weeks on the ground during Katrina, and well aware of all the challenges that city had faced in the aftermath. And you know, even a year, I went back a year later, 2 years later, and there was still a lot of rebuilding that happened. I'm just curious, on a personal level, you went back to New Orleans to start your business again. You want to, again, talk about being nimble. You really had to start over, I would imagine.
Pretty much, yeah. So my house was about 10 feet of water in the street and about 6 feet in the house, and stayed there for 3 weeks. But as I mentioned earlier this morning, for us, the silver lining was the people that came back and repopulated were ones such as myself and several thousand of my best friends that repopulated. But because we were lucky enough to have the infusion of energy and dollars into rebuilding, we grew a significant talent pool of young, very energetic, very engaging entrepreneurs that wanted to be a part of the rebuilding. And many of the folks are still with us in the studio 5 or 6 or 8 years later. So it really has been an infusion of energy that in many ways contributed to our success.
One of the things that I've heard from all of you is that you're involved in the community. And Catherine, you're talking about trying to have that impact in Chicago. Curtis, you're talking about having these regional offices that are connected to all of these clients. Mark, New Orleans, you're from New Orleans, your wife is from New Orleans. Overall, how important is it for someone like yourselves to be an integral part of the community?
Yeah, well, I think what is often lost in a global architecture is the sense of place and the sense of really understanding the culture in which you're working. Alan Eskew, the founding partner, always saw the firm, the practice, as a platform for doing much, much more in the community. So community engagement is central to our mission. And as such, having a deep understanding, as you were saying about with Chicago, the same thing, having a deep understanding of sense of place and how you're rooted in a place absolutely informs the architect.
Stephen?
One of the things that I like to talk about is how to be simultaneously global and local, so that you do, as Mark is saying, you're understanding the community at a grassroots level, but you might be, in fact, using technologies that might have been developed somewhere else and integrating them into the systems. So, but yes, community reinforcement is of paramount importance.
Go ahead.
One of the things that I think is important to all of us in the different communities is, and we all play different roles because of who we happen to be. In our case, as an African-American architect, I do believe role models are important. And I believe that success is very important to be seen by the younger generation that is looking at career opportunities. And I think the difference is that this is a profession that it has been not necessarily the greatest profession to be able to showcase for minority groups to be a great participant. And so therefore, we take great pride in every office we have that we're ingrained in that community. We promote that because we want the community to see that when we are able to be successful in whatever work we do in that community, that this is a profession that is open to others and on a broad range. So, and we can say that, but seeing it is a big difference.
Yeah.
Being able to see the presence of a blend of a diverse culture. Our work is diverse, but so are our people. We cover 13 continents in our office. So it's very important that role models do and be seen, and therefore we keep that in mind. That is a goal of ours, to be successful in the communities we work for the community, not just for our own purposes.
And their inspiration is all the young people.
Absolutely, and we have a tendency to be a very monochrome and monotone profession at times, and I think that's where we've lost some of our power. And so if your daughter wants to be an architect, we have to show her. I mean, we have to show her those examples the same way we have to show her, Curtis and myself, we're a minority in the profession where, that practices in a world where we're the majority. And so we have to start to invert those dichotomies and do that with small pushes every single time.
When did you first know that you wanted to be an architect?
My mother says she knows way more than I did, but I joke it was I studied English and philosophy before I studied architecture, so I say it was during the existential phase of philosophy that I became an architect.
Curtis, do you think there's a certain skill set that goes with being an architect? How did you come to it?
Absolutely. Number one skill set is be a dreamer.
To be what?
Is be a dreamer.
Be a dreamer.
That is a skill set. I mean, the ability to just imagine is part of it. The passion that we all have. This is one of these professions that we didn't get into it for dollars. We wish we did sometimes, but we get into it because we like what we do. So passion drives it, but anybody that has an imagination can leverage that in design, because it's all about creating what doesn't exist. It exists in your head, and you're bringing it forward through efforts of engaging and collaborating with many different people, and then coming out with something that no one dreamed was possible. So it's about being a dreamer, and I really promote that.
I think it's pretty incredible being able to create something in your head like that, or visualize something that maybe nobody else has thought of. As we only have a couple minutes left, I'd like to hear from both you, Mark and Stephen, as well. Stephen, how did you get your start?
Well, when I wanted to be an architect when I used to build tree houses and forts as a kid. But no regrets. I love it. I won't say that every minute is fantastic, because we all know what it takes to get a building built. But I have to say that I really enjoy working with, as you saw earlier, I love working with everybody in our practice. That's exciting. But I really enjoy working with the stakeholders of the project. I like going to the job sites. I like talking to the craftsmen and the workers that make it happen, and collaborating with engineers and pulling a team together. And I just think that the spirit of passion, positiveness, energy can make the world a better place. And architects are very, very well
part of that, very much so. Mark?
I didn't realize we were such kindred spirits. I have a collection of photos of old tree houses and clubhouses. I came from the construction side. My dad was a residential contractor, and I knew early on I wanted to do that until I remember vividly the first time I had to get up on a roof and nail a roof in the middle of the summer in New Orleans. And I thought, well, I want to be involved in this industry, but I definitely am not going to be a roofer. So I figured, something that was a little less physically stressful. But I was always passionate about it. What I love about it is the fact that every day, every commission, every opportunity is unique and different. We are never, as architects, doing the same thing twice.
You guys are certainly having a huge impact on all of our lives, helping to shape the world in a big way. I want to thank you all for joining us, Catherine, Stephen, Curtis, and Mark.